at the bottom of the being and becoming question is something else, and this is something that the existential philosophers and the Jungians and most religious systems concentrate on, which is sort of, well, what's the core nature of being? And when systems of that sort are discussing the core nature of being, one of the immediate objects of contemplation is the fact that human beings are limited, right? There's lots of things we can't do. For example, you're there and you're not there. You know, then that's thrownness from a phenomenological perspective. You're just stuck with what you are. You know, you're a certain height, you have certain eye color, you're a certain amount of attractive or not. You know, you're verbally fluent, you're smart, or you're not, or you're conscientious. And it's just sort of, those are the cards that you've been dealt. And it really is worth thinking about it that way, because who you are in some sense is a consequence of a lot of processes, genetic processes, that are in some ways random. And you've been dealt a particular hand, and then you have to play it. And that hand has limitations. And so people in some sense they're offered opportunities by the nature of how they're constituted, but there's also a tragic element to that, which is, well, as you move in life, you bump up against limitations that you cannot transcend. You know, and those are the typical limitations. You bump up against the demands of the social group, which has a tyrannical element. You bump up against nature itself, because you're susceptible to illness and to degeneration and eventually to death, and so are the people around you. And so there's this issue at the bottom of being that also presents you with a problem. So life is problematic, you're trying to solve it, and that's what you're stuck with. So that's sort of the parameters of being. And so I think in most mythological language, I like to think of mythology, philosophy, and then mythology as like forms of conceptualization that are examining the grammatical structure of being. It's like what's common among sets of people, what's common to the experience of sets of people. And the fact that you are is one of them, and the fact that you are has problems is another. And then a third one is, well, you're motivated, at least to some degree, to do something about those things. And so that's what makes people human in many regards. It's something fundamental that makes them human. So you can think about that as tragic self-consciousness. It's self-conscious because you know who you are, and it's tragic because you also know where your limitations are, and they're fundamental. And that also sets up another set of motivations, which is, well, is there something we can do about this? Can we limit our vulnerability? Can we extend our scope of power? And how do we do that without causing more trouble than we're solving? So with that kind of common problem at the basis of our being, that's also what enables us to communicate. Because we understand each other, because we're in the same states of being. So you can talk to someone about your problems without having to explain what problems are. Because you can't communicate with people unless there's some things you don't have to communicate about. You need a shared set of assumptions. And one of them is, for example, that you have problems. Another is that maybe you're looking for solutions. Another is that maybe communication about that is helpful. You know, none of those things have to be established before you start communicating, because everyone's already got those presuppositions built right into their understanding.